So yes, I was sort of saying, I'll say something about the new year. Partly because everybody's saying something a little bit about the new year. It's sort of very much, we're in the second week now, aren't we? And it's very much in the air still, this sort of sense of, well, we're starting out 2017, and there's this sense of, we celebrate the new year, we think about the new year, there's a sense of opportunity. It brings a sense of something can be different, something can change. So yes, if you pick up most papers or go on social media, there's, new year, new you is very much still, it will sort of jump out at you. I even got in my inbox, new you, new trainers, new year, new towels. It was like everything is like marketing ploy as well. So yes, it's just really an opportunity, isn't it, to kind of think about or how we want things to be different, what change can come about, positive change can come about. So yes, and then as a result of that, many of us set intentions or resolutions. So I'm just wondering how many of you have set resolution, just sort of show of hands, some kind of intention or resolution. Yeah, that's kind of almost all of us, I think. Sort of at least 75%, I think, of the room has set some kind of intention or resolution. And if you're used to setting intentions, resolutions, then you know that, it starts off really good, doesn't it, normally? There's sort of this, everybody is thinking similarly. Everyone's thinking, it's a new year, what are you going to do differently this year? So it's kind of, there's a momentum behind you, isn't there? One has one's own momentum, but it's also in the air. So that's really great. And we also know that within, usually, 2-3 months, even weeks sometimes, depending on what your intention or resolution is, that momentum can begin to fade or flag, and you're having to put a bit more effort to actually do the things you said you want to do, or bring things about, or stop doing the things you said you want to do. In fact, I noticed this weekend The Guardian had a willpower special. So just sort of lots of tips to kind of give us that sort of extra, motivation, momentum for when we do begin to flag. They're already anticipating it, just week 2, which I thought was quite interesting. And there are 2 sort of real reasons, I think, as to why that happens. Why we, will set an intention or decide we want to go in a certain direction, stop doing something, start doing something else, but it doesn't it's not straightforward. And one of the reasons is integration. So basically, we decide we want to go in a direction, and when we decide that's at the forefront of our minds. So there's some energy behind it normally. But as we start trying to put these things into place, or stop doing things we don't want to do anymore, what happens is other aspects of ourselves begin to resist that. Yes. There's other aspects of ourselves that want to go in a different direction. And it could be several other aspects of ourselves. We don't always know what these other aspects are, but what we do know is that we're finding it difficult to do the things we want to do. We're sort of feeling some resistance. And that's just because, we're not integrated. There's one part of us wants to do this, go about our intention. Other aspects of ourselves don't. And one of the reasons we teach the mindfulness of breathing is because it's great at actually helping us integrate, ourselves, bring different aspects of ourselves together. Because when you sit to practice, you become aware of the different thought processes that are going on. That sort of different voices, different thoughts, different aspects of ourselves that we begin to see more clearly, and we can see that there's a part of me that wants to do this. There's another part of me, or several other parts of me, that really doesn't. And then with more practice over time, you begin to sort of coax, or at least understand those different aspects of yourselves, those different motivations that are going in other directions, and then hopefully begin to coax those aspects, transform those aspects so that we can become more aligned, more integrated. Yes? So that's what the mindfulness of breathing sort of, one of the things it helps us do. So the other reason that we don't, we find it difficult to sort of set on a path and actually go on that path is because our emotions are not fully behind what we intend to do as well. Sometimes our emotions are not behind it, or there's just not enough positive emotional energy to kind of fuel our new actions. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because intellectually we know what's good for us. We do know what's good for us most of the time, but emotionally, again, where our emotions are wanting to go in other directions. So understanding how powerful our emotions are is really important. Understanding that actually they are our main drivers, are our emotions. And certainly for me, I remember when I first started. Well, actually, before I started meditating, I had a sense that I wanted to be kind to people and I wanted to be friendly. And I would, before I went out that day, I'd say to myself, right, today I'm going to be kind and friendly to everybody. And it really didn't take hardly any time, just the end of my street sometimes, before I noticed that I was annoyed at something. And it just baffled me, it really baffled me until I sort of started doing the Metta Bhavana, and I began to see that actually, yes, I had all kinds of emotions, and sort of positive emotions were just some of them. I had other emotions, and I didn't seem to be able to just harness them. I didn't seem to just be able to decide, right, I want to be friendly, and there was friendliness. It wasn't as straightforward as that. So understanding our emotions and learning to harness our emotional energy so that actually we can begin to use them for what is in our interest, what is in our good, is a really key aspect of the path. So yes, I always think when it comes to New Year's resolutions that if you had the mindfulness, if you were committing to mindfulness and committing to Metta Bhavana, you're more likely to bring your intentions and resolutions about, because on the one hand you're being able to integrate, see which aspects of you are, pulling in other directions, understand those a bit more, and then bring those, begin to align them a bit more with your intentions. But also by doing Metta Bhavana, you'd access more emotional energy, so you can actually bring more positive emotions to actually support you in following through your intentions and resolutions. And also sometimes when we meditate more deeply, we also see that sometimes some of our resolutions and intentions, sometimes it's what we think we want, but actually when we go a bit deeper in practice, we begin to see, actually that's not necessarily what I really need. Society tells us a lot of what we should be sort of going for, actually, what we should be sort of cultivating in our lives. And sometimes when we practice a bit more deeper, we see actually it's not necessarily, that our happiness, our real sort of heart's desires doesn't necessarily line of things we think we should aspire to. And again, practice will enable you to see that more clearly. What is truly your sort of heart's desire? So yes, we teach the Metta Bhavana in order to cultivate positive emotion. I'm going to sort of talk a bit about sort of working with the Metta practice, or different ways of thinking about Metta. So before that, though, I'd like us to think together. So when I say Metta, what words or images come to mind? Warmth, yeah. Love. Kindness. Kindness. Light. Compassion. Easiness. Sort of sense of ease.
Sort of tender touch.
Tenderness, yes.
Friendliness.
Infinite, yeah. Any more?
Freedom.
Freedom. We're coming on to that.
Universal.
Universal. Let's have 3 more. Awareness, yes, good. Yeah.
Relief.
Relief. That's nice.
Frustration.
Frustration, okay.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Space.
Space, yes.
Kindness.
Kindness.
Understanding.
Understanding.
Connection.
Connection. Good. Okay, good. Yeah. So actually it's one of those activities that you sort of start off and you say the kind of the obvious ones, and then actually the more you sort of think about it, the more other words, interesting words, sort of come up. So thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you now in pairs. We had a couple of words like frustration and it was hard work. So I'd like to invite you in pairs to share with the partner things that you find challenging about the practice of metta, and also what you enjoy or what it promises you as well. Okay, so just find a partner and. Sorry? So the question is, what do you find challenging about the practice, and what do you enjoy or it promises you? So make sure you swapped over if you haven't done so already. Okay, thank you. So let's just hear some of the things that we enjoy about the practice. Anyone want to share what's discussed?
Well, even on a grumpy day, it forces me to think about other people and get just beyond my, tight sense of me.
Right. So enabling you to connect with other people. Yeah.
There's a sense of expansiveness
And
that comes with it.
expanding beyond oneself. Yeah.
It's a reminder to be kind to yourself.
A very important reminder to be kind to oneself. That's where kindness starts. Yeah. Any others?
It expands my sense of presence. So it reminds me to be in the now, to be aware of what I'm feeling toward myself and toward other people.
So a sense of presence emotionally, mentally and physically as well, isn't it? I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about, body language and how, how if you're feeling very lacking in confidence, your physical presence sort of contracts, you sort of get smaller, and how if you're really feeling confident and positive, you just naturally your body language is much more open. Yeah. So physically too, as well as mentally and emotionally. Yeah.
I was going to say, kind of showing kindness to your inner child.
Showing kindness to your inner child. So what do you mean by inner child?
Well, that part of you that really needs that love and the insecure part.
Yeah. So knowing that there's a vulnerability to us, and sort of listening to that at times. Yeah. That's there as well all the positive, confident aspects of ourselves. Yeah. And in certain situations that shows up more than others. Yeah.
It's a bit strange how, especially today, I ended up feeling, I just had this thought that if you are happy, then I'd be happy too. And it's not something that I feel very often, like that clearly. Just saying, not really making about myself, but just saying, if you're happy, then I'd be extremely happy too. And especially after this day with the strike, on the bus, people try to get on the bus, and it's about them first.
Yes.
And it was good to bring myself back to not making it about myself.
Yeah, that's a real insight, that, isn't it? That our happiness increases when others are happy. And that's a really important insight, because that really supports us when we go into other stages of the practice, particularly the fourth stage, which I'll talk a bit about. But that recognition that, if others are happy, we will experience the benefits of that, and vice versa. If we're happy, obviously we know that others experience the benefits of that, we just need to have more happiness in the world. Thank you. Any others?
There's I experience a certain kind of relief and sense of ease when I manage to really touch the base with myself truly in each stage and really recognize what is it there and really embrace it, even if it's like buried under kind of I don't know what is it, but when I actually manage to touch the base, what is it there? My friend, the feelings
right
around a friend.
So you're saying that when there might be lots of discursive, thinking or going on, but actually there's a sense of connecting with yourself and
truly like feeling what is there.
What is there? What do you mean? What is there?
Like, what do I actually feel?
Right, connecting with what's actually going on for you. Yeah. And there's a relief there, did you say?
Yeah, kind of a sense of release and relief and ease. Yeah. So coming back to ourselves. Yeah, because often actually our minds are going in a million other directions, and we're not actually in contact with ourselves. So actually arriving, it's almost like coming back home, isn't it? It's like when you come home, you think,
can shut the door and you can relax. And then you can think, okay, what now? You know, what do I do now? And so it's a bit like that with the practice, that actually when you arrive, you notice what's going on, you connect with what's actually happening for yourself. There's a sense of, this is true. This is true. This is true right now. Yeah. And then you can move from there. Great. Okay. Okay. So, and yes, our challenges then. What are our challenges?
The first stage, just finding your own kindness for yourself.
Right.
I find it really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Just connecting with that. The concept or an experience, a feeling, is it?
Both, I think, but the experience of feeling, I have to dig deep sometimes when it makes me very aware that sometimes I'm not so easy on myself.
Right.
I'm not that kind to myself.
Yeah, yeah. So noticing our sort of self-critical thoughts can be uncomfortable. Yeah. Anything else that's challenging? Yeah.
Well, just like we were just describing, that sense of finding me is the upside of experiencing metta.
Yeah.
In order to find me, it's like going through lots of thorny bushes.
Yeah.
To kind of get to the end. So it's like moving a lot of things aside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which can be really frustrating, but also time consuming. Sometimes I find it doesn't happen straight away. I've got to really kind of observe, and then I'm able to make my way through bushes to find me. Yeah, yeah. So we had two words. We had hard work and frustrating as part of the words of metta, and I think that's what you've described there. Is actually it requires some patience, and bringing your attention again and again to actually be able to contact, one's feelings and a sense of oneself, and that can be frustrating if you're wanting results quickly. One more.
I already mentioned this, but I think it's kind of working with insecurity, vulnerability, especially if it's quite deep rooted. It's difficult to bring metta, especially for yourself.
Right, yeah. So again, go on, carry on.
So no, I'm just saying it doesn't come sometimes. You can't force it.
Absolutely, you can't force it. So that's the other thing, sort of getting connected to what we just said, that it's not something you can decide, well, okay, I'm sitting down to do practice, so metta, click your fingers and there it is. There's a process involved in it, and some of that process includes actually recognising the other aspects of ourselves that we find uncomfortable, such as feelings of insecurity. Thank you. So it's interesting. Well, we've gone from there, from what you've described. We've got the sort of, metta in a sense is very ordinary. We talked about warmth and kindness. Some of these things are very sort of, space. They're sort of quite ordinary experiences. We've all had experiences of warmth at some point in our lives. We've all been friendly to others, and we've experienced friendliness. So all those things are quite sort of ordinary in a way. But then we also had some words which were like expansive and some more exalted kind of words, and getting the sense that our happiness is dependent on, our happiness and our unhappiness is deeply connected to others in a way. The more, that we're interconnected actually. So we're impacted by lots of people's experiences, and getting that sense. So in a way, it goes from very ordinary to actually quite sort of elevated experiences, metta, that universal loving kindness that somebody else mentioned. And sort of arriving eventually at that point where, you don't see that distinction. You really deeply want to cherish, self and other, and you don't see that distinction between self and other. And that's a very sort of exalted kind of state, and something that you can experience in a retreat or through a meditation. To live it requires a lot of practice over time. Okay, so I'm going to give you sort of a few tips on working with metta. And I think I'd like just to remember that metta is a sort of it's the journey, it's the practice, it's all the things that we talked about, that sort of process of finding, oneself, finding kindness within one's experience, finding friendliness. It's also the destination. So being able to live that way and interact that way. So it's the journey and the destination. And so that brings me to my first sort of statement, I guess, about metta, and image. So I'm going to use a statement and an image or metaphor. Metaphors always have their limits, so just so you know that. But this first one is a very familiar one. I think it's the very first advice that people give often when you're doing metta practice. And the statement is, start where you are. So start where you are. And the image is, or the metaphor is, that of a journey. So the other day I was going to Bank station. I sort of go past Bank all the time actually, but I've never gotten out of this, maybe once or twice, but very rarely actually gotten out at Bank. So I kind of thought I knew Bank because I go past it all the time on the Central Line. But I actually got out of the station and realised it was all quite unfamiliar. I sort of, not really visited it very much, or certainly not paid attention if I had. So I knew where I was going. I had sort of a meeting in a particular location. I hadn't been there before. So I knew my starting point, which was Bank Station. I'd been given some instructions as to how to get there. And I sort of start walking along and I was looking around, taking in the clues, taking in the signs. And then I had an idea of where this venue was. So I started walking down this street and I kept walking. I thought, this is longer than the time I was supposed to, it was double the time that I was supposed to, have gotten there. So I realised I'd sort of gone wrong somewhere along the line and had to retrace my steps. And eventually I looked at my instructions again, I looked around at the signs, and then I realised where I was, and then realised where I needed to go next. Kind of familiar thing that you do in a journey sometimes if you've kind of lost your way a bit, or it's unfamiliar territory. So how does that sort of relate to our experience of the metta practice? Well, I knew my starting point, and we know in a way one of the things. Well, we think we know our starting point, actually. We sit down to meditate. We sit down, we want to do the metta practice. And we have an idea of where we want to get to. We've got a sense of our destination in our minds. And yet, sometimes, we have to spend quite a bit of time, actually, figuring out where we are, actually where our starting point is. We assume that we know, kind of like I thought, well, I know Bank. Actually, I didn't know Bank. I'd never really been there before. And it's a bit like that sometimes in the metta practice. You sit down to meditate and you think you know how you are, but actually it takes a bit of time to really tune in, yes? And that's why we do spend some time, around the body and checking in with our thoughts, checking with our feelings. And that's a really crucial thing to do in the practice. Because if you do that well enough, thoroughly enough, it's kind of like it gives you clues as to where to go next, as to how to work in the practice next. Like the clues where I was kind of looking around, and then checking in with my instructions again. Actually, I scantily read them, thinking I knew what was going on, and then again, sometimes I think that's a bit like that in the practice, where I think, I want to develop friendliness, and we have a sense of how that's going to come about, and it's only when we actually really check in with ourselves that we think, actually, your idea of how friendliness is coming about may be quite different to actually how it comes about. And starting from where we are is the most important place, because then you've got real clues, real signs as to how to work to bring about friendliness or whatever it is you're trying to bring about, cultivate. So starting with where you are. Sometimes we don't want to because it's a bit uncomfortable, because we don't want to see that, that we're not feeling very positive. We find it's kind of like looking in a mirror sometimes. It's not always, we don't always like what we see, and that can be difficult. So we want to skip over our experience or sometimes deny our experience. And again, if you do that, you will find yourself somewhere else, but I find that I end up having to retrace my steps at some point. I have to kind of go back to actually what's going on for me. So skipping over one's experience or denying one's experience, at some point in time you'll have to start retracing your steps, if you like, and actually finding it, well, how am I actually? Because you'll run out of fuel. That's what I find in the metta practice. If you're not really connected enough with yourself, you'll sort of run out of energy and you'll find yourself a bit stuck halfway through, and then you think, oh, I'm stuck. Yeah. So at that point, retrace your steps going back to oneself. So another journey I had was at, I was a A406 North Circular. So it's a journey that takes me normally 30 minutes. I found out there was some incident further up the motorway. So I thought, okay, so the first hour sitting there, I thought, okay, it's fine, there's an incident and this happens and it's, it's okay, and, I can sort of sit with it. You know what's coming. So the second hour, I really found myself getting really agitated because I thought, well, I should be at home now. I really should be at home now. I've got things to do. I'm getting hungry. It's cold. It's really not anything to see around there either. This is not how I want to spend my time. So that was the second hour. Luckily, I did remember metta practice. And sort of it just occurred to me, well, there's nothing I can do about this right now. This is what is happening at this moment in time. And no amount of me getting agitated or wishing I was somewhere else is going to actually make any difference. In fact, it's just going to make things sort of worse, yeah? So I was very happy that I remembered that. And then I just relaxed. I sort of relaxed and I just thought, how do I want to spend this time? And I just sort of, I sang a little bit, and then I sort of, was aware of my body, making sure I, let go of any tension that was arising. And I was thinking of the other drivers and, going in the various destinations. And I began to think about the people that were caught in the incidents and how difficult actually that must be. That second hour passed, or the second or third hour. Anyway, it was 3.5 hours it took me to get home. And I was really happy that I did that because by the time I got home, I was tired, but I certainly wasn't overly agitated. I was just able to just be in the next moment. So yes, it takes time for us to recognise where we are, particularly when we don't like where we are, yeah, or where we think we should be somewhere else. And so that's sometimes when you started the metta practice, or you've had some really good experiences on retreat. It's kind of like you come to the metta practice with lots of expectations. You want to be somewhere else. You see the potential of the practice and you want to be there. And so it can be very frustrating to actually go, well, that's not the reality at this moment in time. And a key thing about the actually developing metta is that metta enables you to respond. One of the things about metta, it enables you to respond to whatever circumstances and situations you're in creatively and positively. Yeah, that is one of the fruits of metta. We think it has to be always around feeling boundless love and compassion, and that is certainly one of the sort of ultimate sort of aims of metta. But it's also about how do I respond creatively to this situation, skillfully, positively, making the most of this situation. And if you're doing that, then that's also metta, yeah? Because there's an openness to it, and there's a sort of ability to respond, a spaciousness in terms of your thinking. So that's our that's our first image. Start where you are and the image of the journey. So, yes, I was actually on retreat over Christmas. I was co-leading a Christmas retreat at Taraloka, which is a women's retreat centre. So I asked some of my fellow team members, one things that they wish they'd known about the metta practice when they first started meditating. And one of them said she'd wish she'd known that metta is just about being open and acknowledging. She used the word just, but that was her word. But being open and acknowledging. So that's about turning towards our experience, and that's what I've been speaking about already. When there is a resistance, actually being curious about what that resistance is, connecting with that resistance, getting to know it. It might be another aspect of oneself that's wanting to emerge that hasn't had the space yet to do that. So what is that? And then how to respond to that with sort of a kindness. So yes, and then recognising that within that, with our experience there will be suffering. Again, I think that's one of the things about metta. You think it's sitting down and somehow there's going to be love, sort of springing up. But what we also encounter is our suffering, our particular form of suffering. And that's really important, sort of crucial information, really, that, will actually, it's information about actually how we're experiencing and experiencing the world, how we're experiencing ourselves and how we're experiencing the world. So knowing about how our suffering manifests is really important. So certainly for me, now when I sort of hit some resistance or some suffering, it's for me it's kind of like being handed a gift in a way. It's kind of like it's an opportunity for me to learn more about myself and learn more about the world and others, and then be able to meet that with more understanding. Somebody mentioned forgiveness as well. That comes into this as well. So yes, that was So if I go on to my second image now, my second image is we are the gardener and the garden, and the statement is cultivate the conditions. So cultivate the conditions, and we are the gardener and the garden. So yes, another person on this team said to me, you can't think your way to metta, and I think somebody said that here as well. So metta is an emotion, it's a positive emotion, with all those different facets that we mentioned, but it's also an orientation, an intention, and a way of being that gradually develops over time, and you can't force that. And if you think about a garden, I'm not a gardener, but I appreciate gardens, and they take a lot of time and care, don't they, to really come into fruition. So firstly, a gardener has to know what kind of soil they're working with, yes? They have to know what the weeds are and differentiate the weeds from the flowers. Sometimes it's completely obvious, but sometimes it isn't. Yeah, you have to kind of really look. You have to spend time in the garden. Sometimes things come into bloom very quickly, and other things take a lot of care and need quite a lot of support. Yeah. You can be imaginative in the garden. You can create, sort of in a way what you want. At the same time, there's a science to it. There's some things that we know, that gardeners know works, yes? So it's similar to that. And no two gardens are alike. So that's the same with the metta practice. So the metta practice is a very creative practice that you can bring a lot of imagination to. And certainly, if one way of doing the practice isn't working for you, you've been practicing it, but you can find that it's getting stuck, then it's kind of thinking imaginatively about what will support you to develop metta. So images, visualizations, there's lots of things you can do to bring about metta. The soil, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because the soil is our conditioning, our particular psychology. that we also bring to the practice are the experiences of things that sort of have had an impact on us. We bring that with us to the practice. And actually doing the practice, we're getting to know that soil, if you like. We're getting to know what our conditions are, our conditioning has been. And again, sort of bringing some kindness and acknowledgement to that. And yes, we need support in this garden sometimes. We need to bring things in that supports things. So things like, practices like ethics are quite crucial to metta. If we're acting unethically, it's going to have an impact on our feelings of positivity towards ourselves and others. Friendship is really important as well. Being able to communicate our aspirations to others and be supported in that is really crucial for practicing metta. And patience. We've talked about patience already, but sowing the seeds, creating that intention of cultivating friendliness. So even if you're not experiencing it, or you think you're not experiencing warmth and love and all these really, compassion, actually sitting and doing the practice and having that intention to wish somebody well will bear fruit. Just like that seed that takes time to grow, it will bear fruit. And of course, we have to be receptive as well to what's already, in that garden, if you like, what's already in our lives and the impact that's having on us. Because there'll be certain conditions we're in, circumstances we're in, that's actually having an impact on our ability to actually experience friendliness and confidence, and being able to see that and identify what those are. I guess those might be some weeds that might need to be, transformed, let's say. Okay, so another question for you. So emotions are habits, okay? So we cultivate our habits, emotional habits. We cultivate positive emotional habits, and we do also cultivate, whether we wish it or not, some negative emotional habits. So I'd like to think about, if you were going to just think of one emotional habit that you wanted to positively cultivate, what that might be, and what impact that might have. Okay, so that's the first question. And you can also think about if there's an emotional habit you have that's negative, that you know is not in your interest, and you want to transform, what that might be. Okay, so have a think.
Sorry, what was the first one?
So the first one is a positive emotional habit, yes. Emotions are habits, so yeah, a positive emotional habit that would be really good for you to cultivate. What might that be? And one that you'd like to transform. Just one. And when you're ready, you can share that with a partner. Okay, swap over if you haven't done so. Yeah. Thank you. I want to ask you to share the content of that. I'm just interested in what was it like talking about it?
It was interesting that what we passed in the kind was sort of like two sides of the same coin.
Explain that.
Well, like the thing, the habit, the mental habit you're trying to move away from is the same one that you're trying to move towards.
The mental habit you're trying to move away from or let go of or transform is the same as.
Well, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite of, yes. It's the opposite of, yeah. Oh, there's a lot of nods. So there's a lot of nods in the room there. So it's saying something in a way. Is that something about actually when we release something negative, it opens up the possibility of the opposite, basically. Good. Any other sort of ways of talking about that was interesting, or any observations?
It's just quite helpful to talk about it because it helps you formulate what the feeling that you might be having.
Right. Yeah.
And to realise that they are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. So to articulate it sort of brings it out, doesn't it? Of sort of a, we are aware of these things, but actually if we're not articulating it, it can sort of sit in a kind of, it can be sort of slightly submerged basically in our sort of awareness. And so actually articulating it makes it clearer for us. And then actually having somebody else listening as well. I'm just curious as to how was that? Was it difficult having somebody else listen to particularly a thing you want to let go of?
It's kind of like therapy.
Was it? Okay. Well done. Well done, David Mitchell. Well, it is therapeutic, isn't it? It's therapeutic being able to say, this is what I'd like to change, this is what I work with, this is a habit, and no one's run out of the room going, oh, isn't that terrible? Because actually we recognise. Did we recognise, even if it wasn't our particular habit, did we recognise something familiar in what the other person was saying? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so my third image is, the statement is, we can love our enemy. We can love our enemy. So, somebody else said on this retreat that I was at that the thing they'd like to have known is that, and we know this because we've talked about it already, is that metta can be challenging because difficult feelings come up. At some point you've got to face yourself, and it's not always pretty. I think it's because we just want, we kind of want to see ourselves as basically nice people, who want the best for others and ourselves. That's kind of how we want to experience ourselves. So when something comes up or we see an aspect of ourselves that's not like that, we can sort of shy away from that. So what I want to say here is that metta takes courage. To actually cultivate metta, it takes courage. To see ourselves as we are, not how we'd like to be or how we think we should be, but how we actually are. It takes courage. And noticing that sometimes our feelings about others can be quite complex, not always straightforward. And that actually our feelings about others are very kind of dependent a bit on what they're doing for us or not doing for us. So, we like our friend because they're nice things for us. We're not interested in the neutral person because what are they to us? And we don't like the other person because they threaten us in some way, yeah? They're not nice to us. So it's quite simplistic in a way, isn't it? But that's kind of how we operate in the world with everybody. And I remember when I was doing the metta practice years ago, I used to have positive meditation. I like meditation, so I'd have very positive meditations. The first stage was okay, the second stage was okay, third stage my interest waned a bit, but I sort of tried to bring myself back. And the fourth stage, sometimes a particular person would float into my consciousness, obviously wanting to be in that fourth stage, and I would sort of, I'm ashamed to think about it now, but I would sort of think, no, I'm not wasting my metta on them. It's terrible, I know. And even worse, I think they don't deserve my metta. And now I feel, when I think about that, I think, gosh, who doesn't deserve metta in this world, really? So I had a misconception of metta. I kind of thought it was about always feeling good, really, about just feeling good all the time. And I see, that it's not really about that. If you feel good, great, feel positive, yes, warmth, yes. But really what you're doing as well is really changing that basic relationship we have with friend, neutral person, an enemy, whereby, it's not all about, we're not responding to them just in relation to how they are with us. We're able to respond to them based on the fact that they're a human being like we are and are worthy of love and compassion in the same way that we are. Yeah? It's quite a different way of relating to others. So the image I have here is that of a battlefield, and the war, that sort of constant oscillation, that sort of protecting ourselves from others, defending ourselves from things we don't like, trying to pull towards ourselves what we do like. That's kind of how we tend to operate. And I thought at some point you just want to stop fighting. You just want to stop the war. You want to stop the battles that's going on within oneself. And there's that famous line, it's one of the earliest Buddhist texts, the words of the Buddha, that said, hate is never ceased by hate in this world. Hate is only ceased by love. This is the eternal law. And certainly that's a mantra that I sort of kept going for a long time and still do when I can see negative feelings sort of wanting to form into strong views. So yeah, I was thinking about this, that what do we do when in the world, when there is actually war, what's been really interesting that there have been these truth and reconciliation, is it South Africa had a truth and reconciliation, did Northern Ireland as well, I think they had something like that. And it's really interesting, and I always felt, when I remember South Africa doing it, I felt very moved by the whole experience, hearing about it, because everybody's included in that, you know. The enemies have to sort of face each other. And there's a real attempt to find out the truth, you know, what's actually happened, and acknowledge what's actually really happened and the hurt that's been caused. And through that, you know, recognising that lots of conditions have led to those events, led to people doing the things that they now probably regret. Lots of factors were involved, and there's an opportunity to forgive. So I think in the metta practice, particularly when we think about our difficult person, in a way, you know, part of us is lost in hatred, part of us is lost in resentment or judgment. And when we're actually beginning to see that, we've actually got an opportunity to sort of reconcile ourselves, really, to ourselves and to the other person, recognising their humanness, recognising that they too are worthy of love and compassion in the same way that we are. I think a misconception can be that we have to be have to really like and be friends with our difficult person. That's not necessarily what we're saying here. What we're saying is it's just recognising that they have the potential for kindness and warmth, and in exactly the same way that we do. And actually, if they make progress, wishing them progress means that there's opportunity for happiness in their lives and more happiness in the world. So yes, Bhante Sangharakshita, who's found this movement, he says it's an encouraging thought. We don't have to act on our feelings, our negative feelings. Our task is to experience our negative emotions and then find a way to change them. If we never get to know these emotions, if we indulge them unthinkingly or try to deny them, no transformation will be possible. Yeah. So actually sort of recognising, sort of having that sort of truth and reconciliation. Firstly, the truth. You know, what's actually going on in our experience, how are we actually relating to our difficult person. And then that allows for sort of a gradual reconciliation. Okay, so my last one is love or metta is your true nature. And the image is that of the sun. So, yes, so we've talked about sort of just being receptive to what's in our experience. We've talked about the patience that we need to actually cultivate positive emotions. So there's kind of always a two-way thing. There's a being receptive to what's already there, and then also cultivating, actively thinking, okay, what do I need next? Yeah, and the sort of being receptive. And we've talked a lot about the sort of, I guess, the sort of difficult things of resistance, but it's also knowing that within our experience is also love. It's already there. It's already there, waiting for us to sort of experience it. And it's very much like if you've ever gone up in you don't need to go up in a plane, but it's very dramatic when you go up in a plane. If you go up in a plane, it can be really thick clouds, yes? And you go up in a plane and there's incredible skies, clear skies, and the sun is shining. You think, gosh, that sun was there all of the time. And obviously under all that thick clouds, you just forget the sun, yeah? You can forget the sun. Certainly after February, when we kind of all come through February and the sun starts to shine, you think, oh, the sun, yes? That's kind of how it is, kind of relief. But it's always there. It's always there waiting for us to sort of allow it to emerge. The interesting thing about the sun is that it really shows everything very clearly. I was at Vajrasana, the retreat centre, in November, and I was going out for lots of walks, and there was lots of, it's that sort of time when things are really decaying, isn't it, in sort of November, and, so lots of things were decaying, and you could see the contours, the shapes, the colours of everything, all the sort of, also the puddles on the floor, the sort of mud tracks, and yet, because the sun was shining, everything looked beautiful. Kind of very interesting that, even things that are decaying can look beautiful in the sort of glow, if you like, of the sun. So that's something about how we hold our difficult aspects of ourselves, but also how we hold the difficult aspects of other people. Yeah, it's kind of actually, if we can acknowledge what's difficult about ourselves and others, but if we hold it in metta, we can hold it in a sense of there's more to them as well than this. Yeah. So yes, Bhante again. I'll sort of read what he says. So he says, friendship within the spiritual community is based on metta, on appreciation of the other person's virtues and faults alike. Feeling metta does not blind you to the facts. If someone is greedy or stupid, you see that they are. But with metta, you can always see through that greed or stupidity to the beauty of the human being. It is through metta that you can hold the two together, the ugly truth and the beautiful reality. Indeed, if you don't see the one, you won't really see the other, not clearly anyway. So that's something about how we experience metta, in the practice. When we encounter difficult aspects of ourselves, encountering difficult aspects of other people, always knowing that warmth, that sun, if you like, is also there, and enabling it to sort of, I guess, envelop what we see. And it sort of subtly over time transforms how we can interact with other people. We see more to them, we see their potential, we see more to them than just, what's necessarily in how they're relating to us at this moment in time. We see their potential, we want the best for them. And through that, we'll actually be wanting the best for ourselves as well. Okay, that's all I've got to say for now. Thank you very much.